Gentlemen, for yielding me the customary 30 minutes and yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. This week marks the last time the Chamber will meet until the middle of November. As we depart, the majority walks away with the dubious distinction of having presided over a session of Congress that is widely called the least productive in history. This Congress has achieved that distinction because, although bipartisan consensus is needed to pass any bill into law, the majority has spent the last 2 years pursuing an extreme and partisan agenda. In fact, they have repeatedly spurned potential bipartisanship in order to vote on ideological legislation that will never become law. And week after week, the majority has refused to help our nation's drought-stricken farmers. With a Senate-approved farm bill sitting on the table and a bipartisan outcry to pass a 5-year farm bill growing, the majority has decided to neglect our nation's farmers and allow the farm bill to expire without even attempting to pass a bill at any time in the House. An expiration of the farm bill means that dairy farmers in my part of the country, western New York, and throughout the United States will lose what little safety net they have. Yet when faced with the choice of passing a compromised farm bill or pursuing an all-or-nothing partisan agenda, or as we are doing today, passing bills that have already passed the House just because they liked them so much they wanted to see them again, the majority chose the latter. And western New York farmers don't need the majority to play partisan games. They need a 5-year farm bill, and they needed it now. Unfortunately, the bills that we consider today, offer more of the same. Both the bills before us today are little more than extreme and partisan messaging documents designed to benefit politicians running for office, not the American citizens struggling to get by. Take, for example, H.R. 3409, the Coal Miner Employment and Domestic Energy Infrastructure Protection Act. That's a fine title there. 4 out of the 5 titles in this bill, as I had said a minute ago, 4 out of the 5 bills in this measure have already been voted on by the House, but they were too partisan and extreme to pass the Senate, and they will not yet again pass the Senate. Therefore, it is simply a waste of time today. It costs a lot of money to bring all the members of Congress back to Washington from the 4 corners of the United States. And to come back to repass bills that have already passed and will never go beyond this House cannot be called anything else but a colossal and disastrous waste of time. Among other things, the bill would roll back decades of environmental protections, endanger the public's health, and prevent our country from addressing the growing threat of climate change. Now, the majority knows that such extreme proposals will not pass into law, but they're moving forward anyway in order to serve political campaigns. Similar sentiments appear to be driving the consideration of the second proposal, the TANF disapproval resolution. This bill is based upon a premise that has been proven false by multiple fact-checking organizations, including the Washington Post fact-checker, and indeed PolitiFact, a nonpartisan project of the Tampa Bay Times, has concluded that, quote, by granting waivers to states, the Obama administration is seeking to make welfare-to-work efforts more successful, not end them, end quote. Despite that, we're going to bring up a bill today to cure something that does not exist. And in a time when we could be voting on a jobs bill, the Republicans have instead chosen to block an Obama administration proposal that would help states put more people back to work, and indeed has been requested by those states' governors. Perhaps most telling is the fact that even as we consider these bills, the majority refuses to also consider legislation to address serious national crises. Yesterday, at a meeting of the Rules Committee, they blocked 5 amendments that would address those issues. First, they blocked an amendment by Representative Boswell to vote on the bipartisan Senate Farm Bill. They had another chance yesterday to bring the Farm Bill up before we all go home. And then they blocked an amendment by Representative Moore to reauthorize the Violence Against Women's Act, which expires in days, a bipartisan bill, if ever there was one, because I was one of the co-authors of the bill, that has been routinely authorized by both parties until this year. Finally, they blocked amendments by my colleagues Representative Levin, Connolly, and Blumenauer to pass the tax cuts for the middle class, to extend a production tax credit for renewable energy producers, wind energy, and to consider legislation to address the financial crisis facing the Postal Service. Now, the majority was given the chance to bring all of these proposals to the floor, but they walked away and went forward with the messaging before us today, and so we will pass today 4 bills that have been passed previously. I asked my colleagues in the majority, which is more important, to provide the relief to the drought-stricken farmers or voting to deny climate change? Which is more important, passing a symbolic resolution based upon a false premise of providing tax cuts to the middle class? Which is more important, passing self-proclaimed messaging documents of working together to provide for the millions of Americans in need? If you would ask a farmer in Monroe County, New York, if they would rather have Congress pass a dead-on-arrival messaging bill or act on a bipartisan farm bill, I know and you know what they would choose. In closing, what we are considering today is the result of choices made by the majority, a choice to pursue an extreme and partisan agenda that they knew would never become law. In so doing, they have failed to provide results for the American people and led to the least productive Congress in the history of our nation. I urge my colleagues to reconsider the choices that have been brought here today and the legislation that we are about to consider. In the process, I hope we can finally end the political games and return to the responsibility of governing. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady's time is reserved. Gentleman from Utah.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker,